Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Krista Tremblett. I am a member of the Alberta Citizen Science Community of Practice Steering Committee. And my other hat, I work for the Department of Environment and Protected Areas. I'd like to welcome you all to today's Alberta Citizen Science Community of Practice webinar. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you from Edmonton, and I'm working and living and playing on lands that are now known as part of Treaty 6 and the homeland of the Métis peoples. And through the application of citizen science, the steering committee for the community of practice acknowledges and supports the really important and vital role that Indigenous peoples play and have for centuries in stewardship of the waters, the lands, and all living creatures in Alberta. And by respecting and learning from Indigenous knowledge systems, we strengthen our collective responsibility to steward and nurture the lands in Alberta through citizen science. So I wanted to also, as part of that, encourage you to take a moment to reflect on where you are, and where you're coming from, and to think about the Indigenous partners and peoples that live and work and are sustained by the lands wherever you may be. So, we are delighted to have you join us as we learn about innovative tools that are transforming citizen science today. We have three exceptional speakers, and I'm really excited to hear from them all. They're going to share information and insight on some practical tools and applications that are available for citizen science that you may be aware of and you may not. So hopefully you'll walk away with some new ideas today. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. Please ensure that you are muted. And please keep your cameras off, except for the presenters, so we can optimize the bandwidth and we don't have any issues with audio or anything like that. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for reference afterwards on the website. And finally, just a bit about format. Each presenter will have 20 minutes to share. And if they're shorter than the 20 minutes, maybe we'll be able to squeeze a question in there. But there are also other ways to ask questions. You can use the Q&A feature on Zoom, which is at the bottom of your screen. Actually, Bradley, is that the main way? I was going to invite people to raise their hands, but I don't know if we have that ability.
Yeah, the best way is through the Q&A function,
Okay,
or if it's in the chat, it does tend to get lost. So
okay.
the best way is to throw it in the Q&A, and then at the end, if you've got a really burning question, I think I have the ability to unmute a participant. So
Okay,
that's an option too. And
great.
Krista, I think if you just advance your slides, I think you're still on your
Oh,
there we
yes.
go. You had a nice
Yeah,
flower for the
yes.
land
So,
acknowledgement.
yeah, prairie crocus. Just, we're entering into spring. These are one of the first beautiful flowers that we see. That is a sign of spring. So thank you for prompting me that I didn't get you to show you my beautiful slide. Okay, so let's get right into it. I would first like to introduce Holly Kinas. Holly is a conservation analyst at the Miistakis Institute and a professional biologist with the Alberta Society of Professional Biologists. She holds a BSc from Mount Royal University and has been with Miistakis for about 9 years, since 2016, contributing to a variety of research projects. And over the past year, Holly has worked with CitSci Alberta steering committee to develop and promote the CitSci Alberta Hub, which is what she's going to feature today. So Holly, I'm going to stop sharing and over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the introduction stuff. And Brad, I will just get my slides up here so you all can share along with me. Can everybody see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll pull up my notes here. Yeah, so I'm excited to be joining you all here today. I'm kind of wearing two hats. So as Krista mentioned, I'm a conservation analyst at the Miistakis Institute. So the Miistakis Institute, we're a nonprofit charitable applied research institute, and we're affiliated with Mount Royal University, located in Calgary, Alberta. So Miistakis has worked in close collaboration with the CitSci Alberta Community of Practice Steering Committee, who has actively developed the hub for CitSci Alberta. So I'm going to kind of be taking my Miistakis hat off a little bit and putting on my hub hat. So first, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the steering committee who has spent countless hours reviewing and providing feedback on this, built in Alberta, built for Alberta hub, from everything from design to content to functionality testing. And so I've put up the names of our current steering committee members, also recognizing that over the last year and a half since we've been developing the hub, we've had previous steering committee members help along with that as well. So I have this nice little video here where we get to see the hub. So this is the home page for the CitSci Alberta Hub as a transformative tool. So it really is supporting all of those who share a passion for citizen science, specifically here in Alberta. So the hub is a place to connect, highlighting a rotating carousel of events, success stories, and projects from our catalog, and not to mention a link directly to our directory of practitioners, where you can go and actually collaborate with other folks. So the hub was launched on October 30th, 2024, so just this past fall. And I'm very excited to share all the success that the hub has had so far. Sometimes when you launch these tools, it's like, how fast will it take off and that sort of thing. So we're happy to share that since October, we have had 39 new additions to the directory. So that brings our total to 48 different practitioners of citizen science included in our Alberta directory. We've had 16 new projects added to the hub, which brings our total to 42 projects, and that's just in Alberta, and we do know that there are more out there. So if you're thinking, have I added my project to the hub? I encourage you to check it out and please add your projects. And then we've had 12 new events added as well. So if you've been following us on social media, I've been responsible for doing a lot of the social media posts, and I can't keep up with the events. I've had to increase my social media post frequency because we're just getting so many events, and we just want to promote and support citizen science in Alberta as much as we can. So to start your intro to the hub and why it's a transformative tool here in Alberta, I want to bring to your attention the header. So this is kind of your roadmap to all the different resources and functionality within the hub. And of course, it's kind of with the basics. The first is the home tab. This will bring you back to the main page. You can also kind of click on the logo, CitSci Alberta at the top, which will also bring you back to the home page. And next, we have all the ways that you can connect with CitSci Alberta. So you can connect via email, via social media. So CitSci Alberta is active on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And those, whether it's the email or social media, will come to the steering committee for us to, reshare some of the posts, answer any questions that you have, that sort of thing. Now, the bulk of the resources and functionality is kind of in that central bar of the header. So starting with the About page, that kind of just gives the background context of how CitSci Alberta was actually formed. And so I'll encourage you to check that out yourself. but I'll start by focusing in on the Connect tab. So this tab includes a lot of our functionality on the hub. It's also highlighted, as I mentioned, in several of the blocks on the home page. So we have events, celebrate, the project catalog, a directory, and then, of course, a place to subscribe to the CitSci Alberta mailing list, so the newsletter. And some of you probably have that newsletter already, and that's how you found out about this webinar. So I encourage you to sign up for the mailing list so you don't ever miss one of these wonderful webinars that the community practice hosts. So I'm going to go over kind of each of those pages in more detail here so you can kind of see all the functionality that it has. So on the events page, there is a list of upcoming events. So those are including virtual and in-person events. And they include details such as the host, the date and time, the topic area, the location if it's an in-person event, descriptions, and then a link to register. So if you have an event that is related to citizen science and you want to promote it on the hub, we encourage you to add it. And then people can go directly to your Eventbrite page or your registration page, however you have that set up. So it's really a good way to promote your events. And once an event passes, this is some functionality that I think is a little lesser known about the events. So once an event passes, and if it's a virtual event, I don't know if you, like me, you host a lot of webinars, but people are always like, is there a recording for that? So we actually have built-in functionality that when the event passes, it goes into the past events and you're actually able to edit it to add back in a link to the recording, or maybe there is a PDF you wanted to share with everyone. So you can actually add that back into your past event as a resource. So next is the Celebrate page. I think this is definitely one of the more exciting pages, and I'm just, I love it because we get to highlight some of the successes that we're seeing in Alberta. So they're just short little stories or articles that are actually shared by our citizen science community of practice on, how has citizen science really impacted conservation, really led to some good successes here in the province. And we're always looking for new stories. So we try to keep 5 stories up there and we rotate them. So I encourage you to visit that page because it's always changing. So as we get new stories, and a few of you out there might be aware of, like, I've been pestering you being like, hey, I heard about this success of XYZ project and we'd love to highlight it on the hub. So we're always looking for new success stories to highlight within the hub. So like I mentioned as well, we do have a project catalog. So this is a tool to really encourage collaboration. So there's a long list of citizen science projects in Alberta, and the catalog allows you to actually use a search function. So you can either search by map if you're looking for something that's very geographically defined. There are a lot of our projects are province-wide, so you'll kind of see that on the map in the pop-out window. You can also search by topic area. So let's say you're really interested in biodiversity projects, or you're really interested in water-based projects. You can filter for that. And then you can even filter out for indoors or outdoor projects. So we're going to hear from Laura later talking about Zooniverse, and that's a perfect example of how you can contribute to citizen science just by sitting in your home office if you so choose. So we highlight both of those, and we have that search functionality so that we can really connect people with the types of projects that they're looking for. And here's just a few examples of some of the projects that we have, and then kind of what the details look like. We hid them all in a drop down so that you can kind of scroll through all the projects, but then hit the drop down if you want to see more information. So each project includes a description, a start and end date, which a lot of our projects don't have end dates because they're ongoing projects. It also has the host of the project as well as contact information if you want to get a hold of the project directly. And then it links to external pages. So many of these projects are hosted by other organizations and they already have developed web pages. So you can actually find that link to that page there. Currently, we have a whopping 48 projects, which is very exciting. And we know there are more out there, so you can add your projects simply by using our online form, which I'll show you in a minute here. But I did want to highlight one other thing. So when we had our launch party for the hub on October 30th, we heard from people at that event that they really wanted kind of like a checkbox to say, is this project actively seeking volunteers? So we have now added that checkbox. So if your project has been on the hub before and maybe you didn't check that box off, I encourage you to go back and update that field so that volunteers who are looking for projects to participate in can easily find your project and reach out to you. So next, I'm going to just jump over to our directory page. So the directory really serves as a tool to connect with other practitioners, volunteers, and others in the citizen science community. So you can search either by name, by topic area, or even specific skill set. So we have a long list of skills that when you join the directory, you just check off which skills you have, and then people will be able to reach out to you and say, oh, I see you know how to start a project. Could you maybe help me through that process? So if you're actively engaged in citizen science, we encourage you to add yourself to the directory and contribute to the hub that CitSci Alberta has so carefully curated and created to really support this growing network of citizen scientists. And adding yourself to the directory enables you to add content to the hub, such as your projects, upcoming events, and post-event resources. So once you add yourself to the directory, this will give you access to all the forms. So you can see I'm clicking here on the Contribute tab. So that's where you're going to go to add a project, add an event. That's where a lot of the functionality is. So here's an example of one of the forms that we have. So this one in particular is used to submit a project to the catalog. And once you hit that submit button, it's up and it's live on the hub. So it's a really simple process. And if you do run into any issues, you can send an email to the steering committee. So it's just info@citscialberta.com, I believe. I'll put up the email later, or maybe Bradley can throw it in the chat now as well. And then if you would like to edit your project. So since our launch, we haven't done a lot of overview on, going in and actually editing your project. So I wanted to walk you through that process so that you're familiar with what it looks like on the hub. So if you want to do that, first you have to join the directory. So the directory is your place to get your login information, and that's really what allows you to add content into the hub. So once you've signed up for the directory, there is an approval period, so it actually comes to a person for us to verify that you're not a robot, and we approve you usually within a couple hours, and then from there you can submit, like I said, the projects, the events, and then you can edit your directory listing. You can edit all those features. So in order to edit, first you must log in to view your dashboard. So that's kind of in the top right corner. You can see I'm logged in here. So when you click on the dashboard, this is what you'll see. And then you can kind of click on the different tabs. So first one here I'll show you is my directory listing. So you can see all the different things that I've checked off for my skill set. And you're able to edit or delete the directory listing, events, that sort of thing. So this is the events tab, and you can see like all the content that you entered via the form will basically display here on your dashboard. And then this is an example of a project. And you can see kind of at the bottom of the page, there's two options. There's edit project or delete project. So let's say your project is done and you want to remove it. It's no longer active. It's complete. You can actually delete that project. Or if you want to, extend the date of your project, maybe update the description, because from year to year, maybe it changes a little bit. If you hit the edit project button, it will actually take you to the original form that you submitted. So it's a nice, simple template. You can update the information that you want changed, and then you hit the submit button and it updates automatically on the hub. It's a pretty seamless process. So you can also access this, this kind of dashboard screen from that hamburger menu that's a drop down from the login page. So you can go directly into your events or your projects. So just quickly going back now to the tour of our hub's header bar. One of the last kind of pieces that I wanted to highlight is the conference tab, which has details on any upcoming conferences, past conferences, and then that's another way to get to the events page as well. And last but not least is our resources tab, which houses a wealth of information for users to explore. So if you click on the how to build a program, that's where we're housing a lot of our information. It brings you to this nice navigational wheel to walk you through the different components of citizen science programming. So the wheel provides a description of the programming components, as well as a link to more information, such as why that component is important, key questions and considerations, and a link to relevant resources, such as those seen on the right-hand side. So we're not trying to, no pun intended, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but we're building on other citizen science communities of practice from all over the globe to kind of point you towards some other resources that you can use. And Zooniverse is of course on there as well, iNaturalist. So like our other presenters will talk about later today, we do point to a lot of the resources that they offer. So just in conclusion, I just want to really emphasize that the Citizen Science Alberta Hub is really a transformative tool to support citizen science in Alberta. So it provides connection, collaboration, and celebration and resources to build a program that is successful and impactful. And we encourage all of you to join us on the Hub today. And of course, I had to put that little reminder, if your project is looking for volunteers, please make sure you update that field. I feel like spring is here. Everybody's gearing up for a field season. There's a lot of projects looking for volunteers. So please add your projects today. Let us know if you're looking for volunteers for that project. And we are happy to support and promote these projects. And I think I might have a few minutes for questions.
Yes, you do. Yeah, we're making good time, so no rush. There is one question in the Q&A, and that's from Frank. Frank, I can read it out, or would you rather verbally share your question? Don't want to put you on the spot. Okay, I will read it, Holly. So
Hello
Frank
there,
is.
Krista.
Oh, hi, Frank.
Yeah, no, I think Bradley had to trust me enough to turn off my muting.
Sorry, it took a second, but I found you there, Frank. Go for
Personally,
it.
I would never have done it, Bradley, just saying. Anyway, Holly, I had actually approached CPA Alberta, so the Chartered Professional Accountants, because I'm part of a group that runs nonprofit webinars. And when I proposed, let's think about a session on citizen science, the answer was, yeah, we don't really get it, and we don't think it's applicable. Now, environmental groups certainly get it, because you're wading out in the water, collecting water samples. But what about a sports team, a kids soccer team, a animal shelter, a homeless shelter, something? Does it work, or is it really better fit for the environmental organizations?
I think that's a great question, Frank. And I might also throw it back to Kristen and Bradley, but I will just add one note that it is not just restricted to the environmental sector. We've seen citizen science anywhere from healthcare to astronomy. And maybe this is a question we can kind of re-answer again in the later Q&A panel, because I know Zooniverse has a lot of really neat projects that aren't necessarily environmental related. So I'll leave my answer there, but I'll throw it back to Krista if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I was thinking the same, that this would be a great question once everyone is done to sort of revisit. I would agree with Holly. Citizen science has traditionally been associated with the environmental field and environmental projects. I think what would be interesting is to look at how citizen science principles translate or apply to other sectors. And so if you think about the fundamentals, that, one of the fundamentals being citizen science engages, quote unquote, non-professionals in systematic data collection. Well, using your example of animal shelters, you could track adoption rates or, how many strays are we finding per month? I think so. Looking at the principles, I think it could apply to many different disciplines or areas. What I will say with respect to this hub, having been, part of the steering committee as it was developed, is the where we started was, I think, in the environmental realm, because the practitioners that we engaged, even prior to developing the hub, were, watershed-based, airshed-based, biodiversity. And it was the needs and feedback of those groups that sort of shaped what Holly presented today. And again, I think the functions of the hub are applicable and can be useful um, to any domain: health, environment, sports. Yeah. So those are just some top of mind thoughts. But I love the idea of let's bring that question back when we hear from all presenters. Great. While Holly is stopping to share her screen and I introduce Laura, just invite, I see there's a couple questions in the Q&A. So maybe I will introduce Laura. I just want to acknowledge that we have more questions coming in, but we are making good time. Laura Trouille, she's with the Adler Planetarium. She is a PhD and Vice President of Science Engagement and the Zooniverse PI at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. And that's been the last 10 years, since 2015. Before that time, Laura was an astronomer, jointly appointed at Northwestern University and Adler, pursuing research on supermassive black holes and working with the School of Education on the impact of computational thinking in K-12 STEM education. Laura has earned a bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College and holds a doctorate in astronomy from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Wow, so grateful to have you here, Laura. So without further ado, you can share your screen and take it from here.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And it's a real pleasure to join you all and see what just the strength of the community you have joining these webinars. Yeah, I'm based at an Adler Planetarium and come from an astronomy background, but Zooniverse is across the disciplines. So we've had over 500 projects since 2007. And the scale of the crowd is almost 3 million people worldwide. From that community, for about 80 active projects. At the moment, we get about 1.5 million classifications a week. And I'll describe some of the projects so it'll make sense what a classification is. But generally, it's a very large online platform for participatory science, or if you like to use the term, people-powered research. And about 60 publications, as well as environmental policy and environmental justice impacts come out from these projects every year. Okay, so to understand how Zooniverse works, the first project was Galaxy Zoo. A group of astronomers had a data set of 1 million galaxies, and they wanted to first classify those galaxies so that they then could pursue research questions of interest. This is the interface. It's very typical for a Zooniverse project where it's an image, audio file, video clip, piece of data on the left, and some very straightforward task that We have kindergarten classrooms, like 5-year-olds participating, and senior citizens participating, and everybody in between. The idea was something that a non-expert audience could do. When Galaxy Zoo launched in 2007, 150,000 people participated in the first year, contributed millions of classifications. And there was this sort of proof of concept that if you put the data online and you had many people classify each image, so you could build up like a consensus result, you could get accurate data from a non-expert audience, and you could harness the power of the crowd to unlock data sets. So pretty soon after Galaxy Zoo, other research teams with similar types of needs reached out to our team. From the start, we were based at the Adler Planetarium and the University of Oxford. We were mostly researchers with a couple software engineers in the mix. So another project, this one launched in 2010, but it really helped bring in more researchers to see, oh, I could use this as a tool, was the Snapshot Serengeti project. It launched in 2010. The first weekend it launched, they got 3 million classifications and processed a backlog of 18 months of data. It's a good project because it also helps make really straightforward how we get that sense of how good the data is. So in Snapshot Serengeti, 25 people classify each image. So if 24 out of 25 say, hey, I think there's an elephant in this image and I think it's walking, you can be really confident in that result. Over time, we've also integrated machine learning algorithms, automated routines to further sort of increase the efficiency of the projects. And we always include a subset of data that's been classified by experts so that we can compare the consensus result to the experts. In Snapshot Serengeti, and typical for most projects, it's like 97% of the time, the crowd consensus result agrees with the expert classification. And in the 3% of the time when they don't, it's typically because there's an animal way off in the distance. It's really hard to tell what it is. And even the experts don't agree with each other half of that time. So there's this, many publications have shown that you can get reliable, good quality data from a crowdsourced research effort. So Zooniverse started with Galaxy Zoo, started with astronomy projects. Now we have a whole, like about a quarter of our projects are ecology projects. And we have a lot of biomedical projects, about 10% of our projects are biomed, like this one where you're marking the structure of the cell. And this one is in aid of cancer research studies. Same tools, same platform, same ideas are also applied in the humanities realm. And so here, this is the Anti-Slavery Manuscripts Project. It's a beautiful data set of William Lloyd Garrison and his network of abolitionists, and you're transcribing the handwritten text. And there's built into it is you can see some previous transcriptions, you can see a machine-generated one, and you can edit those and or put in your own. So it's the same kind of collaborative, or in humanities, we often have a bit more of a collaborative classification effort. So it's a really quick rundown of just a few example projects. The fact that we're across the disciplines, we really hold true to wanting as low a barrier to entry as possible, making it accessible to participate directly in real research, make it meaningful for the participants, and very much meaningful for the researchers who really need your help in unlocking these data sets. And this is just showing it's mostly or it is both a browser-based experience and also we have a mobile app. There's projects like Stellar Watch where it's asking, is there a sea lion in this image or not? And you just swipe left or right, yes or no. It makes it just kind of fun and quick. So very relevant to this group, I did a look, and I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list, but here's some of the Zooniverse projects led by teams in Canada and or with Canadian data sets. And it includes, with some of my co-hosts here today, like Calgary Captured and Beavers from Space, there's been some really interesting, this consortium called Notes from Nature, so museum specimen labels that are being transcribed through the Zooniverse platform. And there's a Canadian team with one of their collections that's being transcribed that way. Beluga Bits is looking at beluga tails from this zoo in Winnipeg. There's a couple universities that have used Zooniverse for unlocking their data sets, like Where's Walleye? If you're someone who enjoys fishing, it's a very fun project. And maybe it's a good way to highlight that often Zooniverse is used by teams who do in-person environmental monitoring in some way as a way to bridge between in-person participatory science events. So you may have an event, like start of the fall, and then there might be a couple months where you're not doing in-person things. And so you can just adopt a Zooniverse project that's related to your efforts that are in person and keep everybody engaged in that way, and then come back to your in-person events and it's sort of a feeding back and forth. And it doesn't have to be a project that you're leading on Zooniverse. You can just use it as a space to continue your community's engagement in interesting efforts. The University of Toronto, for me as an astronomy background, there's a number of interesting astronomy projects led by Canadian astronomers or in collaboration with global partners. So Galaxy Zoo, Burst from Space. Canada is a leader in this new CHIME telescope that's really a game changer in astronomy. Name That Neutrino and several others. So I was going to note, if you are someone with a data set or planning to collect a data set, that you find that you're doing a very repetitive task of marking, transcribing, labeling, tagging, doing something to the data in a repeated way, you are welcome to use Zooniverse as your platform to help unlock that data. And part of what makes that accessible is that our project builder platform is free and anybody can use it. We received a major Sloan Foundation grant and a Google Global Impact Award way back in 2012, so that in 2015 we could launch this platform, and it's been such a game changer since then. Before 2015, we would build maybe 3 Zooniverse projects, custom built by our web developers every year. Since the launch of this project builder, the researchers and various people are launching over 40 projects a year. And it's because you're building them yourselves, and then we have a review process to make sure they're quality and going to be good for the participants. The participants are part of that review process. So the interface is very simple, simple browser-based. You input text, you drag and drop data, and you immediately see what it looks like. So this is a great Cornell Lab of Ornithology project on battling birds, but you can see how simple the interface is. And then this is where you set the task. What exactly do you want to ask the participants to do? How are they going to interact with your data? And then here's immediately what it looks like. So a yes/no question to begin with. And this apply for review, I mentioned that there's a beta review process where 70,000 of our volunteers have said, I want to help make new potential projects better before they launch. And so there's a very a standardized form that our volunteers fill out to help give the project leads really helpful feedback that they then revise their project before it launches fully. Different project types, because you may have a data set that you don't want to make public. So I'd like to point out that you can keep your Zooniverse project private, and only people you choose to participate can come into it. And then there's different versions of public projects. You might have a data set and a goal that you would love a global audience to help unlock your data. And so you can make a public project and launch it through our whole process and to our whole 3 million person community. Or you can have a public project that's a public URL, but we don't use our bullhorn amplifier to send it out to all those millions of people. Instead, you might just want a very specific community that you're engaged with to participate in your project, and you're welcome to do that. You can build the project and even get our help in reviewing it and making it better, but then you can just advertise it to your own select communities. You can have a small project like, my background's, I'm French, and one of my favorite projects in Zooniverse is a project that only had a few hundred digitized pages of genealogical records from a very small village in France. And they just wanted their community to transcribe their own local data. And so it was just a few hundred images and a community-based project of unlocking data for that specific heritage. You might have a project that has tens of thousands of images or video clips or audio files, or even a million, and all of those are supported through our platform. If you get above 500,000 images or subjects, then we ask if you have the ability in grants or other means to help offset our web hosting costs. That's the only time that we'll ask for money. And if a team just doesn't have access to funding, we still don't block them from using Zooniverse as a platform. It was really important for us to make this a accessible tool for researchers and not put barriers for different, whether you have access to funding resources or not. And I mentioned the subject types, the audio clips, video clips, image, text, data as subject, GIFs, SVG. And then going back to the public projects that are launched through Zooniverse, there is the critical criteria that you must plan to use the results of the public's participation. So you have to commit to using those data in some way. And you have to commit to either publishing the results or using them in some kind of policy way, or just some kind of use that's going to be beyond your specific locale. You can have a public project that you advertise to your own community that don't have to adhere by that next set of criteria. But if you're going to launch the whole Zooniverse crowd, it must lead to some beyond just your immediate team impacts. Sort of a commitment we have to the Zooniverse volunteers. And some additional resources are just, I mentioned briefly that about the machine learning integration. So because we've been building on this platform for the last 17 years, we've really built up in terms of sophistication and just the infrastructure itself. It's all cloud-based hosting, but even more so, there's some very sophisticated ways to use Zooniverse and AI or machine learning to do some human and machines in the loop type of work. So if you have those interests or expertise or want to incorporate that into your project, there's all sorts of resources on that side. If you're an educator or lead Girl Scout troops or different informal experiences, there's all sorts of resources at classroom.zooniverse.org that I highly recommend you check out. In some countries, student service hours are a big deal, like they help with graduation requirements or scholarship eligibility or different things that students might want to access. And so we have a part of our platform where anybody can do this, but it's particularly useful for this audience of creating certificates of participation. So if that's of interest, in Canada, for students, Zooniverse is a wonderful resource for that, a very accessible way to fulfill student service volunteer hours. And then group engagement features, that's what the image is showing. This is one of our newest features where it was one of the most asked for things by educators of, I want to know the collective impact of my students on Zooniverse. And so we now have a stats page that you can that anybody can be like an administrator of their group. So you could be the CitSci Alberta working group and have your group engagement page on Zooniverse. And you can choose whether to show the top contributors or not. For some communities, some healthy competition is good and works well in their dynamic. For some communities, the leaderboard type thing is really a detriment. And so you would decide if you want to show top contributors or not, but otherwise the collective impact stats are all available through that group engagement page. So with that, I'll pause there. I wanted to leave lots of time for questions, but thank you so much for having me join you today.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for accepting our invitation. I've always been, since I learned about it about 10 years ago, Zooniverse, and in particular, projects that kind of bring a historical lens. So there's one, I don't know if it sounds familiar, the Old Weather Project, where they had historic ship logs from mariners and scientists, and they were just, yeah, reaching out to the community to say, help us digitize this information. So pretty cool, pretty cool.
Yeah, in those projects, those, whether it's the weather records, or just the notes from nature, they're so critical for foundation elements for climate change.
Mhm.
So it's very hard to get good data from the 1700s, 1800s that are really important for us setting then what the future
Mhm.
looks like. And so
Mhm.
Old Weather
Yeah,
was a fantastic project for that.
yeah, great. I think we can maybe squeeze in one question before we move on to our last presenter, Matt. So let's just gonna look here.
It looks
And
like,
the,
oh,
oh,
sorry, Chris. I was just going to say,
yeah.
it looks like a couple questions were related to the last presentation, but I know Frank had a specific question about Zooniverse, which was, do you need a university connection to create a Zooniverse project?
Great question. And short answer, no. No, we have zoos leading projects. We have federal agencies leading projects. There are private individuals, like the Wild Southwest is a fascinating project. And so it's just, if you have data and you need it unlocked in some way, we really want to keep as few barriers as possible to using these tools.
Great. And I have a specific question if I can jump in, Krista. I'm curious, you mentioned the number of publications that result from Zooniverse projects, and something here that we're interested in is, improving the legitimacy of citizen science in published literature. I'm wondering, how do you see Zooniverse projects being recognized or acknowledged in like primary literature? Is it kind of an acknowledgement section? Is it like are Zooniverse folks acting as co-authors on some of this work? How do we make sure that this citizen science component is captured in that research?
Yeah, so in all these, this is our publications page. In all these publications, there's always an acknowledgement section, and there's a deep gratitude by the researchers to the volunteers, everyone who participated. There's also at least 10%, I think it's more like 15 or 20% of articles have co-authors who are participants who then become more deeply involved just beyond the classification task alone. And so then it's acknowledgement through co-authorship. And then maybe built into your question is just the first Galaxy Zoo Zooniverse article that was submitted had a incredibly difficult time getting past the reviewers because it was a new method and there's so much skepticism. But what helps us now, and it's not just for Zooniverse, but iNaturalist and other efforts, is we have reference points of published materials that use these data, and we know that it's good quality data. And so now the article review process is much easier for all subsequent projects because we have such a legacy and a history of proven track record of research validity.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Laura.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you, Laura. Matt, while you're setting up, I will just introduce you to the folks online. Matt Wallace is a freelance urban ecologist, taking on as many nature stewardship and resource projects as he can. He's built his success as a citizen science coordinator, overseeing the Calgary City Nature Challenge and Christmas bird count. And since 2017, Matt has been an advocate for citizen science initiatives and promoting the collaborative adoption of iNaturalist, which is, I think, what he's going to feature today, to monitor, study, and grow a greater appreciation for biodiversity across Western Canada. Matt himself has submitted over 36,000 observations to iNaturalist. There must be a gold star associated with that, and oversees dozens of iNaturalist projects, in an effort to inform land managers and conservation groups on the types of biodiversity they aim to protect. So without further ado, Matt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Krista. Is the volume all right? Double check.
Yeah, it sounds
Yes.
good.
Yep.
Okay, hi everyone. Very happy to be there, and thank you to the Alberta Citizen Science Community of Practice for the invitation. This is a topic I don't normally jump into. Typically, when I'm speaking about iNaturalist, I'm really working on the engagement side for the general public to try and get them involved with participating in collecting data. And this presentation is going to go kind of behind the scenes as to what do we do with the data, how do we amalgamate it, collect it, and kind of get it out into the world for real world research projects. So I won't jump too much in on myself, but yeah, I guess I'm kind of a hardcore naturalist, and I gravitated towards citizen science pretty quickly when I found out that my observations could be helpful to either other naturalists, researchers, or even city planning efforts. And yeah, as Krista mentioned, I organized the Calgary City Nature Challenge. I organized the Christmas bird count. I organized a National Moth Week event. Anything I can pretty much be involved with, I am. And there's several events throughout the year that happened every single year. So if you're interested in participating with those, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. So how I got all involved with this iNaturalist stuff is that I was doing my thesis on the vegetation of St. Patrick's Island, which is in Calgary downtown. So just in the bottom left side of your screen there, that's the confluence of the Elbow and Bow River, Fort Calgary, and East Village. And you can just see the Calgary Zoo on the right side of the screen there. And this picture, it's kind of poor quality on the screen right now, but it's pretty sharp, I will say, in real life. It's from 1948, and this is one of the aerial images that was captured at that time. So the island has transformed quite a bit over the past 150 years of settlement in Calgary. And during my thesis, I tried to understand, well, what is kind of going on here in terms of biodiversity. And the more I looked, the more I realized that we were really missing out on a lot of information in terms of wildlife and flora on the island. There's a lot of introduced species there. Of course, it's been used as a park, so lots of things that were planted. And of course, a lot of invasive species. But there was also probably an absence of native species on the island, despite it becoming quite revegetated throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. So a friend of mine told me about iNaturalist, and I decided that I would start to create a living atlas of the island. And I will just say at this time, there was about 5,000 observations within the city of Calgary posted to iNaturalist, and maybe about 30,000 in the province at that time. And, you know, I contributed maybe 800 or so in the 6 weeks that I spent on the island. There was maybe a couple observers, and it's grown over the years. So you can see almost 200 people have submitted about 4,500 observations, and we're about 518 species currently. And that doesn't include introduced species, just because I'm trying to document everything going on there. So then that idea kind of snowballed, and I started thinking, well, could we do it for the entire city? And this is kind of the distribution of observations at the time. So this is 2017. And that's when I kind of learned about the City Nature Challenge, and I registered the city of Calgary as one of the first 3 Canadian cities to be involved. So before I dive into more details about kind of the City Nature Challenge and what's going on, I thought I'd just talk briefly about iNaturalist. So I feel like most people here are familiar with it now. It's really had a lot of growth the past couple of years. But yeah, essentially it's an online network for people to share their observations and information about biodiversity. And while doing that, they help each other to learn about nature and they learn themselves. So it's very sharing orientated, totally open source and community driven. And I should, I guess, preface this with, yeah, I don't work for iNaturalist. I'm just an enthusiast for it and have been promoting it in my local community and throughout Alberta. And I guess to some extent, North America. So just going back to this quickly, the map you're seeing here, the darker the red, the more observations there, and where you see no red, there are no observations there currently. And this is what an iNaturalist observation looks like. So there's usually some type of evidence. It can be a photograph, which it most commonly is. It can be an audio recording. Sometimes there are field notes that are added up onto the platform. GIFs, which are a collage of photographs, but there's no videos. And I should also say that there are sometimes there's no media associated with the observation, but the most important things for an observation are that there's a date where it was seen and a location where it was observed and the evidence itself. And from there, you can see at the top, I posted this yellow warbler last year, and there is a community source of identifications that come in to either confirm or disagree with that. And similar to how Laura stated, when you have this crowdsourcing, it kind of filters out the cream of the crop, and all of the other ones kind of get, I don't know, pushed down to the bottom, but they're still widely available. A couple other things about an observation is that you can add basic annotations. So, was this bird alive? Well, presumably because it was perched. This is the organism, but there are other annotations you can add for this, such as construction, which may look like a nest, or let's say a beaver dam, beaver lodge, that kind of thing. The life stage, we've annotated this as an adult and a male. So you can get a lot of information just from a single post. And if you look at this map, those are other observations of where yellow warblers have been observed, at least within Calgary. So it's a huge data mining source, but the I guess kind of the foundation of it is that somebody is sharing their photo and usually wants to know just what is it. So to date, it's almost impossible to keep up with these numbers. They just skyrocket year after year and every single day pretty much. So we're around 232 million observations worldwide. Amazingly enough, that's from over 3.5 million people. And we've documented about 513,000 species worldwide. So this is actually a huge burden on what we refer to as the identifiers. And these are kind of the hardcore users who are going in and confirming observations. But surprisingly, they actually get through it pretty well. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but they do it. So as I mentioned, when I first started using iNaturalist in 2017, there was about 30,000 observations, and to date, we have about 1,040,000. We've documented 10,600 species, which is just amazing. And from that, we have around 25,700 observers. So not all those observers are based in Alberta, I'll just say. Like some, perhaps they visited here a couple decades ago. Some are on vacation for the weekend. And as people are passing by, they're contributing their observations. And once again, you can kind of see on this heat map that the urban areas are where most of the observations are happening. And that's mainly due to accessibility. So Edmonton, Calgary, Banff, Jasper, and Waterton are super popular areas. And just to give you an idea of like kind of where we're going, just in the last year, we had over 300,000 observations just added within Alberta itself, and that's only in 2024. These are new observers, so over 4,000, and we added an 1,100 additional species to what we had in 2023. So some of the things that people are using iNaturalist data, and there are a lot. It can be anyone from a community group to a researcher, land managers, city officials, as I saw Pamela was there. So yeah, some of the things that we're learning, every year, I think there's probably close to 50 to 100 new species, undocumented species, never before seen, that are added to iNaturalist, and it's usually an expert who's going through the identification process who stumbles across something pretty cool. Rare species throughout either the province or city, internationally, that's pretty cool. And lots of invasive records with people tracking distribution and colonization of invasives. So that kind of ties into the biogeography things, but there's also a lot of phenology. So that's the science of, the seasonality. When are things appearing? We have species-specific studies, which people are looking at various things. One project, I don't have it in here, but very cool. It's integrated with Zooniverse as well, which is a mountain goat molting project. So people are submitting photos of mountain goats to iNaturalist. The photos are then uploaded to Zooniverse, and there's a molting pattern that they have assigned for all of the observations. And what they're doing that for is to relate molting patterns with climate change. Of course, there's a lot of image recognition. So if you've used iNaturalist, you've probably seen that there's a button that says, "What did you see?" And this is kind of image recognition that has been trained on geography, time of year, and literally the pixels of the images that assigns a name to the identification. So the species, what did you see? And this has actually been used to train other models, everything from Google to other plant identification apps and that kind of thing. The human wildlife conflict stuff, there is lots kind of overlap of where are people spending time, what's in the actual observation. Is it behavioral trait of the species? Is it, an instance of how the person observed it, that kind of thing. Probably one of the biggest uses of iNaturalist right now are what are referred to as bioblitzes. So these are specific areas with a time frame, and we go out to document as much as we can possibly see. And people submit their observations to iNaturalist, which is collected into a project, which I'll show you. So there's kind of some more like passive uses, which are like bioinventories, so parks, natural areas, and I'll show you some projects like that. And of course, there's kind of the data output, which is being used for such things as land use planning, conservation efforts, and accountability by the people making those decisions as well. So this is kind of the gist of iNaturalist, at least within the platform itself. And this is, I'll kind of run through this a little bit, but there's a lot of back-end stuff even below this, so other tiers. But yeah, the people, they take photos or make audio recordings at a place at a time, and they put that into iNaturalist. When they do that, they use this thing called the Identitron, and that's iNaturalist's kind of image recognition. It provides a species name, and people post it. At that time, there's a community of identifiers that review these and confirm the observation. And then that becomes what we refer to as just general data. And that data is also being fed back into iNaturalist and into the community. Sometimes it's, just There's an output by iNaturalist, kind of like your Spotify Wrapped kind of thing, which people get excited about, but also it's using the data to train new models for iNaturalist to continuously improve the technology. And as you can see at the bottom, I have projects listed, and projects are a way of kind of capturing all of that information and providing kind of a sorting mechanism, a collation of the data, and refining it a little bit. So I guess I'm making this presentation today because I know that there's a lot of stewardship groups out there, and there's a lot of questions about how you can use projects. And to be honest, you can get very creative with them, but these are a few of the ways that you can use them. So if you want to organize a BioBlitz, you can definitely use iNaturalist and make a project for that. If you're just curious about capturing observations, either by the public or by, say, your classroom of students, or a dedicated group of experts making observations, you can do that. One important thing I think people often overlook is that iNaturalist is also a social platform within itself, and it provides a gateway to communicate with diverse experts across the world. So we may not have, let's say, the expert on mollusks living in Alberta. However, there's definitely an expert on mollusks using iNaturalist, which you can reach out to and communicate with there. So it's a great way to kind of find your community and engage with them. Of course, yeah, there's lots of opportunities to build data sets, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. All right, so the baseline for projects is kind of the geographic area that you define. And in iNaturalist, we refer to that as a place. So typically this is uploaded as a .kml file, and it's really quite simple, but I guess the main note that I would like to give you is that you can draw just an arbitrary polygon. However, if you're using a place, you would like it to be replicable. And what's important about that is that other people may be able to also use that for their own projects, or be able to search up that location and know what they're actually looking for. You generally want to have, a specific time period associated with your project. So it can be all time, just a continuously running project, or something like a BioBlitz, where maybe you just want to look at what's captured within this place on a specific weekend or perhaps a year. And yeah, with this graph next to it, so the CNC, that's the City Nature Challenge, and I use projects for those. And those are kind of refined to those certain dates, the 4 days that happen each April. So we get a lot of observations then, which is pretty great. But one of the big things is that because we do so much promotion for the event and a lot of instructional tutorials for the CNC, people generally continue to use it all year. And yeah, I don't know, it's great to see like the growth that we've had. So yeah, it's about, just within the city of Calgary, we've added over 230,000 observations over the 7 years we've been doing it now. With your projects, sometimes you want to collect every species that may be found there. But you can also kind of specify it to specific or multiple species. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see I'm just showcasing one project that I help oversee in Calgary, which is the Calgary Burt and Bat Window Strikes project. And these are observations of people who have found usually a deceased bird outside their house or sometimes downtown, and they upload them to these projects. So in this project, we're looking at all bird species and all bat species affected by windows. Something really important to think about with a project is your audience. So is it open to the public? Is it for anybody? Or do you want to have a curated group of people? And within a project, you can kind of specify, like, I only want the observations from, say, Krista or Laura, Or I can have absolutely everybody within that area picking up their observations within this. And kind of with any decent citizen science project, you generally want to have an outcome. So is it to promote an area? Maybe it's a park. Maybe you really want people to start thinking about nature differently within that place. St. Patrick's Island, for example. Are you trying to study something? Are you looking at, for example, in the Calgary Pollinators Project, which type of pollinator has interacted with which type of flower? And how are you going to engage your audience? So are you going to actually share the results of this once it's done? Are you going to continuously promote it? As Laura specified with Zooniverse, the community really likes the kickback, and when you're acknowledging them and contributing them, it really goes a long way to a successful project. Okay, so we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it briefly here, but on iNaturalist, there's 3 types of projects. There's a collection, a traditional, and an umbrella. So collection projects, they are a way of just kind of showcasing your brand or maybe the area, but also kind of collecting observations within an area. So the Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society, they have a great project that looks at Weaselhead Flats, North and Glenmore Park, or sorry, North and South Glenmore Park, and the reservoir within Calgary. And we use this to not only collect the observations, but also to kind of inform our decision-making processes. So one, we're looking at where are people engaging with nature? That's typically along pathways or accessible areas. Are they in the middle of the reservoir? Perhaps that's a clue that they might be canoeing, that type of thing. And the Weaselhead, they have a relationship with the city of Calgary, so they have an opportunity to kind of inform the city when there's something pressing on the line. And as an example, a couple years ago, we had a bear that was observed and posted to iNaturalist. We were able to kind of alert Fish and Wildlife days ahead of the first official report via phone, that kind of thing. So again, with that relationship, it's to engage the public, but also to kind of protect the area and build or foster those relationships with the city. There are collection projects for a lot of different things. So every national park within Canada has a collection project. It's pretty cool that it showcases some of the stats of these areas. And other places that you might find with these would be KBAs or key biodiversity areas. And we also have it for provincial parks within Alberta. We use the collection project for a BioBlitz. So you can see I've defined the Calgary metropolitan area on the right there. We get stats, we get the leaderboards, all that good stuff. So this is more for an event to see how we're doing, not necessarily to kind of produce an outcome of scientific value necessarily. There's also traditional projects. So I say it's like less sexy, more work, but you can get a lot more information. And what traditional projects allow you to do is essentially add observation fields. So these are required fields for the Calgary Bird and Bat Window Strike project. Was the bird found alive, dead? Was it injured? Which side of the building did it hit? Those are all attributes that we can kind of bring with the data once we've collected them. But one of the challenging things with traditional projects is that you generally have to add the observations in manually. And you can see kind of up here, this add observations to this project. So that's a way to kind of filter them out. And it's not as time consuming, but you can also get the community to support it as they come across them. Traditional projects, as I said, like here's the observation field for these ones. It's facial features. So we're looking at arthropod faces. And the purpose of this project, again, it's kind of novel, but an interesting one nonetheless, is to build appreciation for arthropods through their facial features. The Alberta May plant count coming up. They also use iNaturalist, and you probably are, if you participated, there's a flowering stage. So their traditional project is capturing the flowering stage of the observations out of there. So kind of the third type of project is an umbrella project. And just as the name suggests, this is a way to pick up data from several projects across a large landscape. And we can compare them side by side within iNaturalist. So this is a project that I help admin for. It's on all of the Alberta parks, but Alberta Parks is not associated with this project. I would like them to be, but they're currently not involved. And on the leaderboard here, I just want to show you how different places can vary across different stats that we publish. So Fish Creek Provincial Park, the most observations by far within the province of Alberta. And that's because we have a heavy use of iNaturalist contributions within Calgary. So accessible, lots of cool things to see and explore. Lots of observations are going into Fish Creek. But interestingly enough, if we look at the species documentation, we can see that Dilbury Lake actually currently has more species documented than Fish Creek does. So we can look at compare different projects at different times using an umbrella project. And again, like the City Nature Challenge, we're using this to compare cities from all across the world, and it can produce the same types of stats. So yeah, kind of a general summary of all these. I don't know if I have enough time to run through all this, but there are pros and cons to each type of project. It's important to know what you can do and what you want to do and what you really need out of a project before you create one of these. And these are the people who may, be interested in these types of projects. I would generally say that umbrellas are not necessary for the average person, but perhaps maybe you have a novel idea and you can pursue that through the use of iNaturalist. And these are kind of the reasons why most people are sharing. So I would like to say, to learn, the most common question when people sign up for iNaturalist is, what is this bird or what is this plant? So they share it to the app and they look to the platform and the community to really support that. But there are people like myself who really aim to make records of certain areas that help to conserve and also support other initiatives that are happening in a general area. So for me, that's really about helping. And you're probably thinking, well, yeah, this is a ton of data collection, but there are some pretty big outcomes with iNaturalist. So over 5,000 peer-reviewed journals using iNaturalist data, and some of that is actually integrated with Zooniverse just for the, data hygiene, cleaning it all up once it's gone through the iNaturalist process. Some really remarkable things, including other kind of spin-off apps. And I love to talk about this. I could talk about it all day, but probably one of the most amazing things is that there's just millions of people around the world engaging with nature and kind of uniting on a singular platform. So as kind of a last little plug, I really want to encourage you to maybe think about organizing a City Nature Challenge event. It happens the end of April each year. And it's a great time to kind of engage with your community. There are currently around 650 cities registered. Not always do they all take part, so it's probably going to be closer to 625 this year, but it's happening throughout the world, which is amazing. And the dates this year are going to be April 25th to the 28th. And I'm hoping that if you're in the Calgary area, you can definitely participate and help to put Calgary's biodiversity on the map. But you don't just necessarily need to be in Calgary. There are other areas. So within the Calgary metropolitan area, we include Foothills County, Rocky View County, and our satellite metro areas or cities. There's Red Deer County, Lacombe County, and the greater metro Edmonton area, and of course, Lethbridge as well. So I do feel like that was quite a bit. And yeah, there's a lot that you could go into with iNaturalist, but I've provided my contact information here if you or one of the groups that you're associated with would like to learn more. And yeah, if you'd like to see some of the events that we have going on during the City Nature Challenge in Calgary, you can check out our website, citynatureyc.ca. And in terms of socials, I'm pretty much only posting to Instagram these days, but you can find me at City Nature YYC. So I don't know if there's time, but I'd be happy to answer some questions if there is. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Matt. No, that's great. And to your last point about there's so much more that you could get into. I think that's the beauty of these opportunities, is to make the connection, and then offering that contact information so those who have a passion and want to learn more can follow up. So yeah, really appreciate your time. We do have about 8 minutes before 1:30. Bradley, I know you've been maybe looking at the questions. Do you have a few queued up that you think we could ask? And then I'll hand it over to you, Bradley, to close us off.
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question. I know, Holly, there was a question right in the beginning for you, which was asking about what our connection is to the ABMI, if there is any connection. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that at all. I know from a steering committee perspective, the ABMI was really a critical member of our steering committee early on in our community of practice. And so really helped to, was very formative in the construction of our community here. But Holly, was there anything else you wanted to add about that?
Not in particular. Because I came onto the steering committee a little bit later than the formation of it, it is good to know that history and the context. I don't know every project. There's 48 off the top of my head. I don't believe ABMI has any citizen science projects on the hub as of yet. But of course, they do a lot of biodiversity monitoring in the province, but that doesn't necessarily mean their projects are citizen science. So of course, if they do add a citizen science project, then we are happy to profile them on the hub.
Great, thanks. And there is some great discussion in the chat. Pamela's saying she's really impressed by the growth of the program, Matt, and that Surrey has gone from just a few thousand observations in 2019 to close to 85,000 observations in just 5 years. So thanks for sharing that. We also got a fun message from Kate that said one of the coolest citizen science projects she's ever seen is you take photos of gang cockatoos feeding so that you can determine what this endangered bird is eating, which is kind of interesting. So thanks for sharing that as well. Going back to the Q&A, there's a few questions here. One is about data sharing between platforms. For example, do observations from eBird get imported into iNaturalist and vice versa? I wonder if that's a question maybe for Matt.
There is no data sharing that's happening between eBird and iNaturalist currently, and I don't think it ever will. They're kind of diverging in terms of their specifications and the process of how they collect data and pursue it in scientific endeavors. But there are, so kind of in the back end of both of these, you can plug into the APIs of these and you can actually amalgamate the data. But one major difference is that an observation made with iNaturalist is not kind of collated to a central location. So if you go to an eBird hotspot, all of the observations within that area, are just going to one single point location. Whereas iNaturalist, they could be everywhere. So it becomes a bit of a challenge of actually how do you visualize all of these, and perhaps what are you trying to get out of it? But I will say that there are some interesting kind of third-party apps and platforms that are able to show several different citizen science apps all within one. And even to some extent back in the day, like we attempted to get Nature Links, iNaturalist, eBird, and even a couple others all onto one display page so that you could really explore these. But, all of this can be a lot of work for kind of the organizers of a project. And I'm sure it's the same with Zooniverse. You can't just like put something up. You really have to kind of foster the relationship with the community and work at it to build a successful project.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Laura, did you want to comment on that? Like, do you have any information on why some projects become more successful than others on Zooniverse?
Yes, and also just Matt mentioned, so first in terms of platform connections, if you have data that you're interested in, but in iNaturalist, but you then want maybe to label behavior or something else, there's automated ways, like easy, simple ways through the APIs, and a good helpful resource page to send data to a Zooniverse project and then to invite the Zooniverse crowd to help. We did a similar thing with CitSci.org. It's another platform where you can do any kind of data collection and crowdsource that data collection, and then that data can be automatically sent to a Zooniverse project for additional labeling. Then what makes for a particularly successful project? Matt did a great job of amplifying the idea that the more engaged the research team or whoever is leading the project is with their volunteers, the more there's like the thank you moments, the more there's clarity on how this is being used and how it's being impacted. Like Penguin Watch is one of the most popular projects on Zooniverse, and part of it is because they have a wonderful warmth with their volunteer community of like tens of thousands of people, but they're very engaged in sharing back. And it's very clear, and they've made very clear the impact. They've helped expand marine protected areas around different islands throughout the Antarctic that are really important breeding and survival spaces for penguins. So that clarity of like how this data is being used and why we want your help, why we need your help. Those are key elements.
That's great. Thanks. Krista, I am going to jump off the webinar to run to another meeting. So I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can just proceed with the final piece here. Don't worry about running an official poll, but I know you had a question that you wanted to end with, and maybe folks can just enter that in the chat.
I don't.
Oh, I'll remind you, what topics would folks like to hear about at a future webinar?
Yes, thank you, Bradley. Yes, and I also just want to acknowledge that there were a number of other interesting questions in the Q&A that we will endeavor to follow up on. I'm just thinking, I'm thinking if those folks who asked the questions that we didn't get to answer are comfortable reaching out to us with your contact information, you can email us at, I think it's info@citsci.com.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I put it
Great.
up in the chat there.
Awesome.